All right. Welcome back to our live stream here at the Last Chance Stampede Fair. We've just been doing live podcasts here with anyone and everyone happy to talk to us. Right now, I'm here with my good friend, Justin Cleveland, who is a fellow candidate for the state legislature. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Justin?
I'm Justin Cleveland, running for House District 17, which is, I guess I never looked at the geographics, probably 80% of Lewis and Clark County, the whole north end from Birdseye and Lincoln Road through Lewis and Clark County and to Teton County up to the Ponderay County line, and running for the House District and just down here for the fair, and made it through a 3-way primary, so on to the general.
And to contrast that, again, I'm Katie Fruits, and I'm a candidate for the state legislature in House District 80, which is also here in Helena. The difference is I have one of the most geographically small districts. It's a lot of neighborhoods and stuff. I've got Carroll College in my district, whereas Justin's, even though it's still a House race, is a much larger geographical district. So how does that affect your campaigning?
You put on a lot of miles, a lot of different events to get to, because you got the North Valley and Birdseye, but then Wolf Creek and Craig and Augusta and Lincoln and Fairfield and Choteau and Penderoy. And
lots of windshield
Bynum.
time.
Yeah, a lot of miles, a lot of over the Continental Divide.
Yeah.
So it's more, like you say, it's not a town, it's a rural area, has a lot of farms, ranches, businesses, small towns, so good people.
So with that, I imagine the issues that your voters are talking about and are most concerned about are going to be a bit different than what some of the people I've talked to are. So what have you heard are people's number one concerns right now?
I'd say number one, there's a lot of talk for exempt wells, water rights with the farming and ranching, and then property taxes. Those are probably the top two things going on.
And I know you and I have talked about it a little bit, but what are your thoughts on exempt wells?
That's a good question. I know they had the water interim committee meeting this afternoon. Of course, we were here, so didn't make it over that, but there was a couple guys I know that were going, so I'll hopefully get some information there. But the exempt wells with, I think when you look back on it, with the amount of water, the gallons that they, for an exempt well, how it classifies as that 3 million gallons a year or whatever, 10 acre-feet, that's a lot of water, but it was for stock and ag use, and I think then it drifted into the subdivisions and all the homeowners, and when you look at all the wells, they're not using, probably most of them aren't using near that amount of water but they could, but there's no way to really monitor it.
Yeah. And for anyone watching who may not be as familiar with the topic, exempt wells is a pretty touchy discussion point right now. Essentially what it is instead of being connected to a city municipal water system or having a permitted well that would typically be bigger, the law allows for people to build these exempt wells, which are smaller, and like Justin mentioned, the max is 10 acre-feet is the amount of water that they're allowed to use. So some of the concern is that the water's being used and not regulated as well, and so it's becoming a touchy issue when we start talking water rights. And
when they talk about the 10 acre-feet, that's 1 acre of ground covered 10 feet deep in water. Yes. So that's a lot of water. I come from an irrigated area at Fairfield, and the allotment there is 1 acre-foot on the irrigation. So, which is plenty to grow your crops. And so why would you need 10 acre-feet of water? But
let's see. And then did you mention property taxes was another big one?
Yeah, through some of the visiting I did on the primary campaign trail, and one in particular that the families had property at Sealy Lake for 60 years, and they're being priced out of that because of the property taxes on that second home. They don't live there, and it's been passed down in a generation, so it's basically probably going to have to be sold off. And like I told the guy, yeah, you're going to have to sell it off, but then you have to pay all that capital gains taxes, and they got you coming and going. So I think those homes like that, those areas where families had them so long and they can prove that it needs to be something done with property taxes.
What do you think are some of the, I guess I would love to hear, what do you think are some of the things that have contributed to our property taxes being the way that they are right now?
Yeah. It just seems like property taxes when they were 10, 15 years ago, when the prices of the homes weren't that much, you know. Yeah, we complained about property taxes, having to pay taxes for something that is an unrealized gain. But with it's probably the show Yellowstone, I don't know, and Montana being a tourism state and COVID and everybody started moving here and prices went through the roof and property values, they say, doubled, but didn't do anything, didn't increase my value. But if I want to sell, yeah, it'd be worth more, but then you got to replace it anyway, so you don't really win in that situation. But it's probably from people wanting to move to Montana and be living in the West, living in Montana, and willing to pay whatever to get out of the state they're in, and buying houses on sight unseen. You know, they'd hit the market and they were gone. And,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of that I think spiked during COVID when we had that influx of people wanting to escape other states.
And that was my question then, that if property taxes are going up that quick and that fast, then what's happening to all the extra revenue? Because the state's got to be flush with cash.
Right. But that's not what you hear. Instead, you hear, you know, Justin and I just a little bit were together at a legislative training where they brought us a bunch of different charts and statistics about the state budget, kind of showing where the breakdown is on our spending, but also our revenue. And the general consensus is, it seems like there's a little bit of a panic, or at least an uneasiness about maybe having a tight budget. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the budget might be tight because of the addition of things that they've done, and they got to keep going with those. And if we stayed back where we were and not grown the programs, we'd probably be all right. So
yeah. Well, the way I see it is having a tight budget means that we can't be spending recklessly, and we're going to have some accountability, and we might have to cut in places where funding is not being used appropriately, which I don't see as a bad thing at all.
Right. And you have your, you know, the whole issue take forever to go through, but with the Constitution and what a government's there for, and we've gotten so far down in the weeds doing programs and taking care of things that the budget just keeps growing and growing on it. And we're forgetting about the infrastructure and protection and things like that.
So what do you believe is the fundamental role of government?
To provide protection for our rights and provide infrastructure. Being water, sewer, things like that. Yeah.
Interesting. So then, as far as that applies to different parts of our government or branches and services, what sort of things would you look at as being, I guess, the best in alignment and the worst in alignment with that sort of philosophy?
I guess when you look at it and you see these, well, even with the grants given to communities, and a lot of people love those grants, and yeah, they're good for your communities, but where does that grant money come from? It's overage and taxes that we tax a bunch, and then we dole it out, and your legislator, your politicians, whoever, they look like heroes because they got their community a bunch of money and they use that. But
they took your money and then gave it back to you and made you feel like they were being generous. Or actually, they told you that they were being generous.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be happy that we got our money back. And
yeah,
so those types of things. And it's just that there's so many of those issues, and it's a way we've been trained to think, you know, that these are good things. It's
Right.
good, and it's good, but there's a cost to it, and a lot of people don't realize that that is tax money, tax
Right.
from different things. And like I've said before, even with livestock tax, I have horses just for enjoyment,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's like $6.75 a horse per year. It's like, why?
Well,
I
was
have
talking
two
to a guy.
mules. One of them's 35. Two of them are 35 years old, and
Yeah.
they're just there, and they were born on the place and raised on the place, and
Right.
they'll be there till they die. And I guess if I have to pay taxes, I will, but I don't think it's right.
For sure. And I was talking to a guy, and what a lot of people don't realize is that livestock tax even applies to things like your chickens.
Chickens, your rabbits.
Yep.
Yeah, everything.
Do you know how many people do not pay taxes on their chickens? How many people don't even realize that that is a thing? I didn't realize that was a thing until I started looking into it.
Right. Yeah, I had that conversation with a guy in Fairfield, and he said, I didn't know there was. He said, that's probably that green card I get in the mail. I said, yeah, that's your green card to pay your livestock taxes every year.
So crazy.
Yeah. So those types of things. But the property tax, and yeah, they made the shift in the last legislative session. But like I've said before, even with the Northwestern, I go to Montana Power because I'm old, but Northwestern energy bill, and even got mine today, and it's still in there. I must come every month. I don't pay attention, but their taxes, state and local property taxes, are passed through to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had our residential taxes reduced, but we still pay on the corporate end because they pass that through. That's part of business. They're not going to eat that, so you can shift it to them, and then you pay for it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
It just makes it less transparent in the long run, because then people don't know necessarily what they're paying taxes to.
Makes your power suppliers and gas suppliers, utility people look like the bad people for raising their rates.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and even on the smaller business level, it still impacts it because, I mean, like any time, they then have to up their prices. And I was talking to another candidate on one of our earlier interviews, and he brought up that a lot of people view Montana as being a relatively lower cost of living as far as cost of goods, and that offsets the price of the housing. But I think with shifting some of that property tax onto businesses, we're kind of losing that rather than addressing the problem at the source. So what do you think are some of the practical steps we can take moving forward to help the property tax problem?
Well, I think there's been plenty of things thrown out there, but just like I think your previous discussion, just the two taxes, and I wouldn't be sales tax, you got your consumption tax, and got all these things to look at, but it's just like, I think you need to, for the problem is to curb your government spending appetite, because we've got the money. It's not that we need to spend it all the time. Mm-hmm. We've got it. So instead of locking it away and not being able to get to it and all these different things, we can reduce that spending habit.
Yeah.
And until you do that, you can't, it's just like personally, if I want more stuff, well, I got to go get another job. And that's the way it is with government. When you fall into the same lines, that if you got three ways for money, and that's cut your spending, go get another job, or sell something that you have.
Yeah.
And that relates personally, and it's the same with government, because we the people are the government, and not just to be spending foolishly, but making sure what we're doing and not creating programs that we have to continually fund.
Yeah, that's good. Just out of curiosity, how do you make sure that you stay true to principles when you're making decisions and figuring out where you stand on certain issues?
How do I make sure? First, does it line up biblically? Because that is the true truth, is the only truth. But we need to get back to that in the Constitution, that we the people, and you have those rights, and you look at the Constitution, there's been many things I think misconstrued in the federal and the state as far as that goes, and that it's an opinion. It's not based on what went on, but to go
Right.
back and see what the reasoning was for that, at the originality of it, and not a 1955 court case. Now that's the precedence. I don't think so. But
Right. Well, and we see that a lot lately, is that use of precedent being used as a way to excuse or to override the original meaning.
right.
And that also brings us to another one, like kind of at the intersection of faith and history and politics. Is right now I've been hearing a lot of the debate. Do you think America was founded as a Christian nation?
Founded as on Christian principles, yes.
Yeah, I would agree
I
with
mean,
that.
you go clear back to the Mayflower and when they came and the compacts they set up, and that they were there for religious freedoms. And then you look at the writings of now John Wise, the preacher, was jailed many times for preaching against the undue taxes. That was 100 years, almost 100 years before the Revolution. And
Right.
they reprinted his sermons in Hamilton, I think, and Adams, and was passing those out. That was the primer. Reprinted his sermons. So,
well, and even during the Revolution, you've got your Black Robe Regiment. That was all preachers
right.
who were fighting in the American Revolution. Right. So I have heard some people take it to the extreme to say that America has this sort of favor with God because of, I wouldn't go that far by any means, but I do think it's safe to say that our nation was founded upon Christian principles. And was it John Adams that said the government was wholly inadequate for any people except for moral and religious people?
Right. Moral and just society. And we see that today, that things are going off the rails because we've lost our moral compass, and you can't govern people who don't want to adhere to those principles.
So where do you draw the line on a policy? If it would be, and this is not necessarily my own wording, but these are questions that I've had people ask me personally, is there a point where you draw the line and say, yes, this is something I would do personally because of my faith and my values and my principles, but I wouldn't force that on someone else through legislation? Is there a line there? Or how as a legislator can you uphold your own values without forcing them upon someone else?
It's a good question. To stand on my own values and not force them onto somebody else. But I guess that's the reasoning behind the vote would be, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And because of my faith, that I would vote this way because of that, because it is for the good of the people. Right. Whether they see the good or not, there is good behind it. And it's not just people getting what they want, but sometimes you don't get what you want and it's for your good. Right.
A lot of times, yeah. So what are some of the other, I guess, key points in your campaign? Issues or...
Yeah, you got your private property, and of course we've talked before about corner crossings. That's going to be
that's a very controversial
very
one.
Controversial, and
it's controversial within both political sides of the aisle. Right.
And you've got farmers, ranchers, outdoorsmen, everybody is involved in it. And of course I brought this question up to one of the Supreme Court justices in a meeting I was at, just if he was ready to start hearing those cases. And they're thinking it's probably going to go to the federal Supreme Court, which it probably will. But
I think after a little bit it will.
Yeah, gotten in. I don't know where it went wrong, but what he said with the railroads, and some of them got ground
Right.
from the
Yeah, they
government to
gave
harvest
away
timber.
every other half acre or
So-
quarter acre.
Yeah, to harvest timber and
Yeah.
whatever they needed, and then they wound up selling that off and doing things, and now you're all checkerboarded up. And was that ever the intent? I mean, did somebody not read something, or was that the intent that they could do that? You know,
Yeah.
or should have it reverted back to federally owned land? I don't know.
So then if you could boil it down to just a line in the sand stance, are you for or against corner crossing, or is it still kind of a gray area?
Still kind of a gray area.
That's
Yeah.
fine. That's perfectly fine. And I think it's going to continue to be a gray
Right.
area because I think there's so much nuance to it that it's really difficult to just come out and
Right.
say this or that.
Right,
know?
and it's only happened in the last 10 years with advancement of technology and different maps that
Right.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
could
20
take-
years ago, we
yeah.
wouldn't have had the technology to say, this is the corner I'm stepping from
Right.
this piece of land to that one.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different world we live in.
Right. Yep. People wanting to be on the public ground.
Yeah.
Public. Yeah.
Public landowners.
Yeah.
What are there any other conservation issues that you tend to run into a lot while you're on the campaign trail?
Just access to public ground or public lands,
Yeah.
making sure they're there. But of course, now we've just recently the push to push grizzly bears back to the management of the state. So that's going to be another one to look at to see how.
And what are your
go
thoughts on that?
forward
Do you
it.
see
I
it
think
as a positive?
I see it as a very positive, and
I would as well.
had a discussion with a guy last week on it, and he gave me his thoughts that it was good that we didn't jump right into a hunting season, because I think it would, he said he thought it would cause a lot of undue harm to what's going on, but let's they've got a plan, and let's get control of it and then start working into that.
Right.
So
Well, and I think at the very least, anytime that you are turning that authority back to the states, especially when things like grizzly bear management, like that very much disproportionately affects different states.
Right.
So having that local authority, I think it's going to be really
yeah,
beneficial.
and this house district that I'm running to serve in is a lot of grizzly bears.
Yeah.
From the eastern Rocky Mountain front into Lincoln, and yeah, it's heavily populated with grizzlies.
I bet.
Like I told one guy, you know, when I was till I was 50, I probably didn't see 10 grizzly bears in my life, and now you can see 10 grizzly bears together running in a herd, you know. And it's
Which is so crazy.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, with that, if you could leave people with one more, like, what is your vote for Justin Cleveland pitch?
Well, I'm a Christian first, then a conservative, but a conservative voice for Montana and family rights, and wanting to curb the government spending appetite.
There you go. Vote Justin Cleveland for the state legislature.
All right. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rachel.
This has been a great conversation. As always, we're going to continue to have more guests on the podcast here. Again, a huge thank you to New Vision Thrift Store for providing this absolutely gorgeous set that we have here at the Last Chance Stampede. And again, we are also filming this live in the vendor hall, so there are people walking by as we're talking, and so you never really know who could be our next guest. So definitely stay tuned.
Well,
it could get exciting.
I think I've seen them hanging around because they keep walking back and forth. So
I think there's a few people eager.
Yeah. So it'll be good. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for listening. Saw Tabitha brought me an iced coffee, so